Going on, guys? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer channel here on YouTube. Dylan, today is Monday, October 30th, and an MLS player has officially won the Ballon d'Or. Did Messi deserve it, you think?
No, but was it inevitable? Yes.
Yeah.
It's like when they give out an Oscar to like Leo finally got his. It was not on his best movie, but he deserved it.
Yeah.
Not that Messi hasn't gotten his awards before. This is his 8th, I believe. But it did feel more like a career award, finally getting his World Cup sort of thing, rather than actually the best player in the world last year. But it's really hard to argue against Messi getting any award.
Yeah, I think it's they're starting to become a little bit of a problem with that award. I think, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, feels a little bit like the Heisman, where if you're not on a winning team, you know, your stats do matter, but it's more so things surrounding your team and what you've won. I feel like a goalkeeper could never win it. It feels like a defender can't win it. I'm sure maybe down the line somebody will, but it's an attacker's award. And even this year, if we're going off the best attacker, it wasn't Messi. That is
Right.
a topic for another day. However, today we are doing buy or sell for match week 10 in the Premier League. Today's is a lot more off the field than on the field. I don't even know if we're talking about any of the games in this one, but it's about time to assess some managerial topics and then to give some verdicts on some players, one in particular that Dylan wants to talk about, and kind of assess their situation in their career at their club thus far. We're going to kick it off right away. Dylan, I'm going to let you introduce this one. What is our first buy or sell?
So I am starting to feel bad about how frequently this is a topic. They are technically still a top half of the table team, but I am going to be dogging a little bit on Manchester United once again today after their thrashing on the weekend at the hands of City. They looked fine in the first half, looked terrible in the second. But you know who hasn't looked good ever in a Manchester United jersey is Antony. Is he, buy or sell, he is the worst Premier League, we'll keep it to Premier League, the worst Premier League signing of this decade. So just from January of 2020 forward, is he the worst signing of this decade thus far?
So before I answer that, I do want to point out the fact that Man U are only 2 points off of Newcastle in the Premier League.
Oh, yeah. That's why I feel bad. Like, it's not ideal, but yeah, it's Man U, so they'll always get my hate.
So on this one, I'm actually going to sell it. I'm going to sell it because I did do a pretty deep dive. I actually went back to the 1920 season. So when 2020 kind of started.
That's fine.
You had João Felix for 127 million. Good signing. Didn't reach his potential at Atleti. 127 million euros though. You had Eden Hazard, 120 million to Madrid. 11 goals and assists in 54 games for 120 million. Harry Maguire, 87 million to United. You had Tanguy Ndombele, 62 to Spurs, which is just so bad because I know so much about how poorly that worked out. You have Pepe to Arsenal for 80 million. Arthur Melo to Juve for 81 million, who had 1 goal in 42 appearances, 0 assists. You had Lukaku, 113 million to Chelsea, 8 goals in 26 matches.
That was in 20. That was the summer before 19, right?
It was his second move to Chelsea. Yeah.
Okay.
You had Jadon Sancho, 113 mil to United in 21-22, 50 in goals, assists in 58 games. And then Cucurella just stands out to me because he was like the worst research signing, I feel like, ever. As far as he wasn't even that good at Brighton. And 65 million is just absurd for him. I'm going to say that Lukaku or Arthur Melo is the worst just because their production has been or was so bad. Lukaku's saga is well documented. You know, Chelsea's been trying to get him off the books, can't get him off the books. He's had several loans out. And then Arthur Melo, just the sheer lack of production at all is shocking. It's Serie A, though, so you don't hear as much about it.
Yeah.
Antony, though, was a terrible signing. And I'm going to talk about this later, but it feels like it was a grasping at straws by Ten Hag to get an Ajax player that he knew, but also appealed to the commercialism and the big money of Manchester United. He wanted to make a splash signing. He thought Antony could be it. It's a Brazilian coming over. He's got flair, but he also knows his Ajax system. So I'm sure Ten Hag thought it would work out better, but it just hasn't. He's got 4 goals, 2 assists, 7 yellow cards, and 1 massive scandal under his belt in 32 appearances. And he was bought for 95 million euros.
So like the Lukaku's like a good shout because we always make fun of it because we like picking on Chelsea. But he did have 8 goals and 26 appearances at Chelsea. So he's doubled the goals in less appearances at Chelsea than Antony. I know it is a bit different position. One's out on the wing, one's more of a central forward. But yeah, I don't know. I like Harry Maguire's pretty shocking. I think Maguire is more like it's fun to make fun of him than like him actually being as horrendous as people talk. Like he's certainly not worth 90 million, like by any stretch, or 80 million by any stretch of the imagination. But 95 million for Antony when it was Ten Hag's like big marquee signing, and I think that signing has been a large part of the downfall of lack of rise of Man U. And I know you're gonna dive into that, I believe, pretty shortly here. But I do think stylistically it doesn't necessarily fit the Premier League. We've seen a lot of flashy showboating guys not do extremely well in the Premier League as of late. For me, that's my one, man. He's brutal, but it's so much fun to hate on him. So I'm glad they did it.
He's got one noteworthy stat that stands out as we're looking at his production pie chart here. He's in the 97th percentile for shots total. And that's really all he's above 70 percentile in. And 97% shots total, but 25% non-penalty goals. So those shots aren't leading to any kind of production, obviously. And I don't think he'll turn it around, but also you're looking at 1 year, 32 appearances under his belt. So I don't know. I feel like it's still early, but there are no signs of him turning it around.
That's the reason I didn't throw Mudryk in the mix too, is because it's just too early for him.
Yeah.
But I think Antony, I've seen enough that we're only 3 years into the decade, but I'm ready to pull the trigger and say he's been the worst signing I've seen. Let's stay. I think it's a little out of order that we were initially going to go on, but let's stay on topic. Let's get all the Man U hate out of the way. I got another Man U buy or sell for you. Buy or sell that Ten Hag will be able to right the ship at Old Trafford?
No, I'm going to sell that, and I'm going to get like a little out on my diving board here, and I just finished inverting the pyramid. I'm going to dive into the deep end of soccer analysis and tell you why Ten Hag didn't work, and I'm going to tell you why Louis van Gaal and his tenure at Man United was a perfect predictor of what Ten Hag would go through. I'm looking over here at my notes because I had to write all this down. So Ten Hag is a Dutch manager. We know that, obviously coming from Ajax. Before he was at Ajax, he was the manager of Go Ahead Eagles, Bayern Munich's second team, and Utrecht. He was appointed manager in December 2017 at Ajax. Do you have any idea what his roster looked like when he got appointed manager of Ajax? He had a 21-year-old Andre Onana, 17-year-old Matthias de Ligt, 21-year-old Davinson Sanchez, who was really good back then. He had a 20-year-old Donny van de Beek, also very good back then. 20-year-old Frankie de Jong, 20-year-old Mazraoui. How do you say? He's with Bayern Munich now. His name is like Nasser Mazraoui. Sorry, I butchered that. And a 24-year-old Hakim Ziyech. Erik ten Hag was extremely successful in the Ajax system. He inherited these players who mostly came through the Ajax academy. It's the quintessential Dutch system. They build them up from the bottom to the top. The players come through all the way through Ajax, and then they sell them off for big money, like most of these guys were. Let's look at like the most successful Dutch coaches of all time: Johan Cruyff, Frank Rijkaard, Bert van Marwijk, Dick Advocaat, and you have obviously Louis van Gaal and Rinus Michels, who was the father of total football. There are two ways the Dutch managers go. You have the Cruyff style, which values the individual. He values superstars, but they also play this total football style. When he went to Barcelona, he started La Masia, which is obviously their world-renowned academy. If you look at the success of Dutch coaches outside of the Netherlands and the Dutch national team, there's little to none outside of Barcelona, which Van Gaal won 2 La Ligas. He almost won a Champions League. Obviously, Cruyff was legendary at Barcelona. But none of these other guys ever had success outside of a Dutch system like PSV or Ajax, really. So the theme outside of this and why they didn't have the success is that you have this trend emerging in world football of the massive money. You have these commercialized clubs. Louis van Gaal actually warned Ten Hag in 2022 about going to Man United, saying it was a commercialized club. They don't have near the same system as Ajax. You're not going to be able to develop players from when they were young because that's just not the style anymore. If you look at Alex Ferguson's teams when he was so successful, Paul Scholes, David Beckham, all those guys, they came up through the United system, but you just don't see that anymore at teams like United. So he's having to kind of balance out these two identities of Man United and then what he had success with at Ajax. And it's just not going to work. And I think it's going to continue to get worse the longer he's there, unless he's truly given the chance to like completely revamp the club from top to bottom, which he's just not going to have the time to do at Man United. So taking all that into consideration, I think teams like United need to be very wary about hiring. I don't want to like generalize Dutch managers in general because I'm sure there will be I think Arne Slot will be a very successful guy. He's not Dutch, but he's come up through Dutch teams and he's used to those systems. I think he's somebody who can have success outside of that country. However, more or less, if they have their success with Ajax, especially inheriting those players that Ten Hag did, he was always going to be successful there, no matter what he chose to do stylistically, because those players were so used to playing together and they knew what the principles of Ajax were. Man United is like the opposite of that right now. Real Madrid is the opposite of that. Manchester City is the opposite of that. So Ten Hag's kind of doom was foreshadowed from the very beginning. I thought Ten Hag would be a great hire for Man United. I didn't know as much about soccer at that point, but the culture of the clubs, I think it's destined to fail.
I still think there is potential because I think at its core, United still wants to have an academy like a Chelsea, like an Ajax, and wants to build up from the ground up. However, I do think you're right. I think the expectations are just far and above being patient enough to let him really install a system. And not that he even installed a system at Ajax, but he understands how those systems get installed and understands how to manage those systems from a top down all the way down to the academy. And we've seen a lot of success with it at Ajax. One thing that does kind of stick out to me, though, is how bare the cupboards were left at Ajax. I mean, they're currently sitting in 18th. And I think part of that is he isn't there. I do certainly think if Ten Hag was still there, they would still be performing better than 18th.
Or did he see the writing? Did he see the writing on the wall?
Right, exactly. Right, exactly.
What he failed to create in the academy.
Exactly. So, like, part of me thinks, well, he has to understand this Ajax system because he had such prominent success there. But like you listed off, the team he inherited was absolutely littered with future superstars, and he helped them realize that potential. So he has the ability to take young players and get them to play at their best in a system. But he was there for 4.5 years left, and now they're absolutely horrendous. So maybe he wasn't really good at the building up either. Like that was the first thing I thought when they signed him, was he will come in, have all the resources. Man United historically likes to build off of their academy. Obviously, they like signing superstars as well, but they do have a history of having some academy.
It's a pretty distant history at this point, though.
It is. No, it is. But a lot of their best years were off of success that was brought on by academy players. And Man U always likes to live in the past and the glory years. So if they really, truly want to get back to that, it felt like a really good stylistic change. But I think the lack of success, yes, they won a trophy last year. I think that is a huge, albeit the Mickey Mouse trophy. That's a huge thing. That's kind of a feather in his cap to possibly buying him some time.
Oh, it absolutely is buying him time for sure. Yeah.
At least he has won something. But I don't know if it is enough to get him the 2, 3, 4, 5 years he really needs to have a complete system overhaul like would need to happen to have him see a lot of success at Man U. I think we probably overestimated the patience of Man U board, Man U fans when we were both so excited,
Yeah.
because he is a good project manager, I believe, at a place like United. I just don't think he'll have the time to see a project through.
The last couple things I have on Ten Hag is with his EFL Cup run, that was in the midst of a Marcus Rashford masterclass. That portion of the season, he really benefited from Marcus Rashford scoring like 15 goals within 2 months or something like that. Another thing is I think Man United was hoping to bring him in and get somebody that had the aura of being a great talent identifier. And Ten Hag is just he's not
awful.
He's not that. I think it really goes to show, like, I don't think he was planning to leave Ajax for like 2-3 years beforehand. I think the situation with Man U just came up and it was opportunistic for him. So he was probably attempting to build Ajax for the future. And I mean, that's the history of that club. Like, you want to ensure that your managers always set the next generation or the next coach up for success. And it just looking at Ajax now, not only are they playing bad, the talent just isn't there. They don't have that 20-year-old that has a market value of 80 million that's going to be sold, here in the next year or two. So Ten Hag didn't bring that in. So I'm very skeptical about him being able to do anything like that at Man United. And I think we're going to continue to see maybe not as bad as Antony, but similar Antony signings. I think Mason Mount's another good example. He wanted to get a superstar
Højlund could very well. I think Højlund doesn't necessarily have the cachet coming in, but I think 72 million for him, when I have seen nothing.
Højlund needed to go to Ajax before he went to Man United.
Right.
He skipped a step. He skipped a step.
It's when you get a little over anxious in your career mode and you're like, oh, sweet, I can go play at United right now. And then you fall flat on your face and end up playing at like Fiorentina in 3 years. I don't see a lot of potential for him to right the ship. Another transition for us, another guy that people are starting to question if he can right the ship is at Chelsea. So I saw a really interesting little piece from the TalkSport pundit, who is absolute garbage. But this is a fun little topic for us. His
Which
statement
one of them isn't garbage, honestly?
True. Fair. Simon Jordan, though, said Chelsea will win the Premier League in the next 2 to 3 seasons. So I think we would both hard sell that. Like, I think that is a very firm hard sell for both of us. So I wanted to mix it up a little bit. Chelsea will win the Premier League before Newcastle. Buy or sell? I think this is all on the caveat of none of this is happening until Pep leaves.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably only one or maybe 2 teams that can knock off City from the title winners until Pep leaves. So that's why I didn't want to put a year time frame on it, because who knows how long Pep's here for. But does Chelsea win one first or Newcastle?
I think Newcastle does. I don't think Pochettino will win a Premier League with Chelsea. I think the more that I think about Pochettino and his career and what he does, he's just not a very good big game or big moment manager. And part of that is tied with his legacy with Spurs. But just even at PSG, there were some games that were, I mean, look at his Champions League run. Like, all the talent was there, and he didn't even make like a semifinal. They got bounced, and was it the round of 16 or the quarterfinal? It was before the later stages of the tournament for sure. I think a lot of the people that are smarter than us look at Pochettino's his kind of panic that he goes into tactically and inspirationally when big games come about. And I don't think he has the muster to win a Premier League title. Part of it, though, is like, how long can Newcastle hold on to Eddie Howe?
So that was kind of going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is it that you think Eddie Howe will win a Premier League before Pochettino, or is it that you think Newcastle will get some next level Pep-esque manager in for Eddie if he has a down year where they finish 10th? So, or is it that you firmly believe Eddie Howe is a manager that can win a Premier League? Because Newcastle fans are very split on, is Eddie the manager for the next 10 years or is he manager for the next 2 years? Super split. I'm a pretty firm believer in Eddie, but I feel like a lot of outsiders, mainly on name alone, because where was he before? Bournemouth, woohoo, very exciting. I think a lot of people on the outside don't see him as being a Premier League winning manager. And right now, when you have Arteta and Pep, I would say probably not, but I'd certainly put him in that second tier of managers. So when those two inevitably leave for bigger and better things, I don't really see any reason he can't.
Yeah, no, I think that Eddie Howe can. I think he's kind of part of the next generation of managers that don't necessarily do anything like tactically profound or innovative or something that people will like write books about in a tactics novel. But he's the type of manager. He's a man manager. He's a player manager. He inspires his group. He knows that we have to rely on superstars and people who have come up through our academy, like Miguel Almiron. He didn't come through the academy, but you know what I mean. But we also have to sign guys like Bruno Guimaraes. Bring those big talents in, which I think is, a lot of these the managers who are big time players who maybe were assistant coaches under big time managers under Mourinho or Pep or whoever, they'll have success because they were like drilled in those successful systems. However, I kind of question their ability to man manage, which in the world that we're getting in, where scouting is so much easier, you're going to have superstars coming from Japan, from Saudi Arabia, maybe one day America. You're going to have to be able to man manage more. And I think guys like Arteta, they're kind of the last breed of these like tactical minded managers. So I think Eddie Howe, the deeper that he gets into his Newcastle career, the more success he will have, as opposed to kind of that 3-year downfall that a lot of these tactical, profound managers have.
No, I absolutely agree. I think he's you run through the wall for the guy, you invite him to your kid's birthday kind of guy, and I think that's exactly the route we're seeing managers have to go, because of egos, because of fluidity of rosters. You're not seeing guys play at a club for 10 years anymore like you used to. That's just not something that's going to happen. My one concern for Newcastle moving forward is starting to see some transfer misses that are on par with Chelsea. Tonali is obviously a little hard to say it's a miss. He got suspended, but even before that, he wasn't looking that great. And then you just didn't get Diaby or Madison across the line. So the question of Newcastle pull, I think, could play a large part in this. I do think to win the Premier League, you're going to have some serious pull. And I don't know if the pull is there compared to a Chelsea. That would be my one huge reservation right now.
Yeah, that was kind of
as far as manager and recruitment goes, I think Newcastle has a massive edge over Chelsea.
I think that was kind of my concern with Newcastle, even with the takeover, is will they be able to really attract players? Because at a certain point, like all the teams are going to offer big name players huge contracts, and will that little bit more from Newcastle or a lot more from Newcastle really make a difference? If you don't want to, if you're a Spanish player and you don't want to move your family to the northeast of England, so that's something that Newcastle will have to deal with, but I'm sure they have.
The scouting's going to have to be on point. It's going to have to be close to like Brighton level scouting with, Chelsea level money to kind of make it work, because recruitment will be really tough. So the scouting is going to have to be top notch. And Ashworth so far, I think a lot of people have been fairly impressed with him, but a couple of misses there is starting to put a little question into Newcastle fans' heads.
Yeah, y'all haven't really missed with signings. You miss more so with guys you haven't signed. So I'd rather miss with guys I haven't signed than guys you do sign for $95 million. Let's go to the next topic, which is buy or sell. 4 managers will be sacked by Christmas. I think we have the candidates on here as Moyes at West Ham, Rob Edwards at Luton, Heckingbottom at Sheffield, Ariel at Bournemouth, Company at Burnley, Ten Hag at United, Cooper at Forest, and Dyche at Everton. I think by Christmas you can cross a lot of these guys off the list. I think
I'm gonna
by May most of these guys might be.
Yeah, like I think like February is going to be the time where we see half of these guys get axed.
Yeah.
They'll give them January possibly and see how their signings go. But like, I don't see any reason Rob Edwards, like Heckenbottom, I think could very, very, very well get sacked before Boxing Day because Sheffield has been absolutely horrific. Company's not going anywhere. I don't even know if he'll go anywhere if they play poor all season. Like it just seems like a project they were super excited about. And I don't think relegation is the end of the world for a Burnley. So I don't know if he's going to go anywhere. Ten Hag, I think, gets more time. Steve Cooper, I think, is pretty well liked at Forest. Sean Dykes, I mean, he got a pretty big win on the weekend, and they're looking kind of decent-ish. Calvert-Lewin's finally healthy, so maybe they'll kind of turn thing around. I think David Moyes is in a lot of trouble. Obviously, he's bought himself a lot of wiggle room over his tenure at West Ham, but they've looked horrific the last 5 games. Like
he always feels like he just does something to hang on to his job a little bit longer.
Yeah, they're going to go on a 3-game win streak,
yeah,
and then they're going to go on a 4-match winless streak, and then they're going to make a small cup run, and he'll do just enough to hang on to his job. But as it stands right now, I would say him and Heckenbottom are my 2 leaders in the clubhouse to get sacked. Iraola, I think, is just too new this year to get sacked, most likely, unless it's just kind of a panic sacking. But
like it was with who did they sack right before he came in?
Gary.
Wolves now, yeah, Gary O'Neill.
And that's the reason I think the only, like, because he's so new, it's hard to sack a guy before Christmas that you just hired and fired a very, very solid coach for. But I think because they're seeing the success of Gary, they might be like, okay, we can't ride this guy any longer. We just got to cut bait here and move on. I think performance-wise this year, as in relation to expectations, he's been the worst manager in the league. But I think because it was such a new hire, he'll be able to buy a little bit more time for himself.
Yeah, he's also about to get Alex Scott back, which should create a few more goals for him. He's kind of their catalyst. He's their Madison, if you will. I'll go probably 2 by Christmas, 4 by mid FA Cup, February, April time, or February, March time, excuse me. All right. Buy or sell, Sheffield will have the worst season in EPL history.
I mean, they're on pace for by far the worst. I mean, I know we're only 10 games in. They're on track for 4 points. Like,
less than now 4 points. One point.
They're on track for 3.8 points if we're really doing the math. They're on track for 1 point and the minus 84 goal differential. And the worst all time was 11 points by Derby County in 07-08 with a minus 69 goal differential. They only had 1 win that year. It was against Newcastle. But I mean, I don't think either of us expected Sheffield to be good this year. They were certainly relegated in both of our preseason predictions. I don't think anybody could have seen it go this poorly. I think you were more likely to see it go this poorly. You talked quite a bit about all of their outgoings or lack thereof retaining loan players that got them up.
Yeah, they got rid of everybody late too.
This is a whole new level of low. I might have been too high on our American defender, who is finally getting playing time but having to play out of position. It's just not fair to him, but he looked really bad on the weekend on one of those 5 Arsenal goals. I mean, they've got thrashed 8-0 and 5-0 now. I believe they have a 5-1 in there too. Like it looks bad. I wasn't around watching the Premier League in 07-08, so I can't tell you like eye test they look any worse. But this is by far the worst team I've, in my conscious memory, have seen play Premier League football. It's ugly. Yeah,
they've lost games to Forest. They've lost a game to. Trying to look and see if they've played their games versus Luton and Bournemouth yet. They lost to Burnley. They played Everton. Oh no, this is I'm looking last season.
I think they played Everton and
they drew Everton. Yeah, they drew Everton. So they actually haven't played. They haven't played a lot of yet.
They got Wolves this weekend, which is big, but I think Wolves is looking really good right now.
Yeah, they've still got a lot of their games versus those relegation teams, but 10 points. I don't know. I'll sell it just because they might get a new manager bounce in there at some point, and maybe take 2 wins somewhere. 11 points. That's just a really low bar. So
It is a really, really low bar, but this is a really, really bad
yeah,
start. And I mean, the 84 goal differential is the on track for is super inflated by they won't lose another game 8-0 all season. Like they're bad. They're not. Nobody's that bad to have 2 8-0 defeats. So like it is definitely hyper inflated. So maybe not on goal differential, but I could very well see them get stuck at like 8 to 10 points right now. I mean, they are lucky. They do have Bournemouth and Burnley back to back right around American Thanksgiving. And one of those is at home, I believe, even. But yeah, it's tough. I mean,
they've got Luton at home on Boxing Day. If they lose that, I'll buy it.
All right.
Yeah, if they lose that one, I'll buy it. Dylan, I've got a few extras for you. I have here who will be the first club to win the Premier League once Pep leaves Man City, but I'm going to change that to buy or sell. Arsenal will be the first team to win the Premier League once Pep leaves Man City.
I'll buy. Like, I guess I'll buy. Like, the Ange project is still too young. It's super, super, super exciting right now, and Arsenal doesn't look that great. But it's still Spurs, man. Like I hate to say it, but like
I didn't even have us. I didn't even have us in mind, honestly.
I can't even for me right now. Those are the. I mean, when you take into factor resources and current roster, I think Pep is gone in the next 2 to 3 years. So when you take into account current roster, because that's super important, and resources, I think it would definitely be Spurs and Arsenal. And I would probably give Arsenal the slight edge. But if I was taking the field or Arsenal, I guess I might take the field, but I don't know how I don't know how valuable the field is. Like Chelsea is a big project. Yeah. United's a big project. Newcastle is still quite a big project. So like I guess I might take Arsenal over the field, but sure, I'll buy that it's Arsenal because Spurs is the only other realistic contender, and Spurs will do something Spursy at the end, I'm sure.
Maybe. Next one, last one. Will anyone other than Haaland or Mbappe win the Ballon d'Or in the next 5 years?
No. I didn't even need to hear the second name. Haaland's going to win like 3. Maybe Jude Bellingham, but like...
Yeah, Jude Bellingham and Vinicius would be the only 2 others that I could think of. And Vinicius, Brazil would have to win the World Cup.
Vinny can't because Mbappe is going to be on his team in 2 years.
But if Brazil wins the World Cup...
No. The only person that could be Bellingham, because same team again as Mbappe and Vinny, but like a very different position. And
Maybe
if he brings England, if
they might all be on the same fucking team.
If Bellingham brings a World Cup to England, then he'll win it. But I'm not saying England's going to win the World Cup in 2026. So I will say I'll sell that. Haaland or Mbappe will win each of the next 5.
It's a pretty safe bet. You got anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Pretty long one today. Not really a Premier League recap, but we had some conversations that needed to be had, I think. Can't promise you guys that this is going to be the last time we shit on Man United, but we appreciate you guys listening. As always, if you got to the end, congratulations. Go get yourself an ice cream cone. We will talk to y'all later.
Hit that like and subscribe.
Hit the like, subscribe. Throw us a comment. Let us know what you think. We will talk to y'all later this week. Peace out.